Hello again, everyone. This is Tony LoPresti here with another edition of Big Questions. I'm from the Religious and Theological Studies Department at Salve, Regina University, and today we're going to focus on the issue of technology. And when, specifically, does technology become more of a hindrance than a help? With me today are three of my former students. To my left, Jillian Tulgren, and to her left, Amelia Burke, and then Zachary Harlan. And all three were capstone students with me last fall. And full disclosure, they were all asked as part of the capstone class to conduct a protest. We were studying protest movements of the 1960s, and as a way to kind of put that into contemporary perspective, students were asked to design their own protest, something meaningful to them, and they had basically free rein to go wherever they chose. What they chose to do was to look at the issue of cell phones and their peers' use of cell phones, finding that perhaps they were going a little bit overboard. And maybe there were times when it would be more important to pay more attention to the person in front of you than to the person texting you. So with that, I'd like to ask you, why did you choose this topic? There could have been so many things that you could have talked about, called attention to, protested. Why did this topic rise to the top as what you wanted to spend your time focused on? Zach?
Well, it started, I think, with the article that we read early in the semester. I think it was Christian Smith's article about like the millennials and stuff, and that was the first article that I had ever really read like about like my generation and seeing it from that like objective view. And like we all came into class the next morning and we're all saying like, wow, we really are like that. Like we really do like depend on them that way. And then the conversation just kept going over like the next 2 months until we finally decided that we should do that for our protests, because so often we talk about how you'll be sitting and having a conversation with your friends and they have no idea what you're talking about because you were on your cell phone for the whole conversation. So I think that and just everything else, it just kind of came in perfectly.
Can any of you say a little more about the millennial generation, what you think the characteristics are of this generation that you think is particularly noteworthy or that may have inspired? We know it's cell phones and some would say almost an addiction to technology, but what about the millennials do we want to call attention to?
I feel as though what I received from the millennial generation article and the conversations we had in class is that we're a generation that's, for lack of a better term, obsessed with materialism and consumer goods, and we generate and gain our satisfaction off of, I guess like our projected persona through social media or through our cell phone, and just we're not, I don't know if I'm explaining that really well. I don't know. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think we're so focused. We're kind of just saying this. We're so focused on social media and how many likes we get, and what pictures, if we look good in our pictures, whatever, that we kind of forget what's going around outside of us. I think what's going on in society.
So do you basically concur with what you were reading? Would you say it was an accurate portrayal?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, I do. I think we were also kind of surprised that we just had never really thought of it that way until I think we were almost a little offended at first when we read it. Like
I was.
Yeah, like, oh, we're not like that. But then thinking about it, like, yeah, we are like that.
And then as you sit there in class and you're sitting there and saying, no, I'm not like this, and you're being offended, and you look to the student next to you and they're texting on their phone saying what? And then it's like, all right, maybe we are
denial.
like that. Yeah.
I hope they weren't doing this in my class.
Oh, no, not yours, the other one.
No.
You were on right before. Yeah.
Okay, so you had this idea that maybe you should call attention to how much time students were spending on their cell phones. And I think I've read statistics that say that 59% of young adults in your age group readily admit that they think they spend too much time on their cell phones. Mm-hmm. So you probably had a welcome audience insofar as they would agree with you that, yeah, maybe I do spend too much time. So how did the idea of doing something at Miley Cafeteria come to you?
Whose original idea was it? I think it was yours, right?
Well,
I want to say it was a combination. I think it just...
Because we kept talking about like what we could do to like target millennials, and then we kept reading the different articles about the cell phones and like then we just were talking about how, like, even when you're in the Miley cafeteria, you can't have a conversation, or
Right.
if you go with, 2 or 3 people, it's guaranteed one person's going to be on their phone, like, at some point the entire time. So we were thinking that because it'll be Thanksgiving dinner for Miley, which is always the most packed dinner of the year, like, even local alumni even come back in to, like, eat. So we figured, like, it's the busiest time, so draw the most attention to our cause to do it. And also, with it being Thanksgiving, it's supposed to be a time where you're thankful for the people around you. So it all kind of tied in really well.
Yeah, that's the message I tried to push or press on people the most, because I was walking around the cafeteria and trying to encourage people to participate in our protest. And if I explained it to them and they didn't sound interested at first, I don't want to say I tried to guilt trip them, but I did, and I said, this is Thanksgiving, this is the time where you're supposed to be with your loved ones and be thankful for who you're with, and really pay attention and literally give thanks for what you have and who you have.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like at that point people started participating, but in the initial introduction of our protest there was so much apprehension, and I did receive glares, just not nice words a little. It was disheartening at first. But then when people saw, I think, that we really believed in what we were doing and in our message, that more people started to participate because they felt it.
Yeah.
But when we were just standing there at first, I feel like it was just kind of an afterthought. Like, people thought we were just crazy.
I also think that, like, at first glance, you don't really see many protests on campus. So I think that almost alarmed them.
Yeah.
But then once we went in there and explained what we were doing, I think they really responded a lot better than that first, initial impression of it.
I mean, I definitely caught glares, and like what you said about guilting them, but I definitely guilted them into doing it. But because, I mean, the ones that I would have to guilt though were the students that were like pushing me off, like while texting still, like saying like no, like there's no problem, like they're not a dick and so on. But so they're like, oh, that's a silly protest. So like I would always love it, and I would feed into that, and I would take their words silly, and I would explain like, well, isn't it kind of silly that you're sitting here with your 4 roommates and your 2 best friends from class, and isn't it kind of silly that you can't put your phone down for 40 minutes to enjoy Thanksgiving dinner with your family at school, because that's your family while you're at school, is your friends. So, and you'd say that, and they would just kind of look like, oh, well, take my foot out of my mouth.
Well, to people in my generation, it certainly sounds kind of silly. I would never think of being on the telephone while I am having dinner with people. It would be to me, it would be similar to being on the phone now when I'm trying to talk to you. It's like, hold on for a minute, I gotta, respond to a few texts. But to your generation, this is very countercultural. Right, and doubly, you pointed it out, Amelia, you're doubly countercultural because not only are you calling attention to cell phone use, but you're doing it by means of a protest. And there aren't too many young people on college campuses these days who are making noisy protests to try to draw attention to an issue. How did that feel to kind of put yourself in the spotlight? Are you sort of natural camera hogs where you enjoy being in the spotlight? Or was this kind of pushing you into your outside of your comfort zone,
Absolutely.
so to speak?
I did not want to protest. I don't like to be the center of attention. I did not want to protest. I was considering just taking a 0. But, I swear to God. But, after doing it, I'm really happy that I did it. I think I got a lot out of it. And I don't know, I definitely felt comfortable doing it. I think it was because the cause also helped a lot. Just because we resonated so well with it. But still, definitely not used to protesting.
So when you say you got a lot out of it, can you be a little more specific? What did you get?
Well, I just think that now I felt like I had a place in society. I'm not the most observant of society. I'm going to admit that I probably am a little addicted to my phone. But, doing something that could have actually made a difference in someone's life at that moment, at that dinner, and they, had a better dinner out of it, I really, enjoyed that aspect of it, trying to change someone's, outlook, kind of. And even change my own a little. Afterwards, I was more conscientious of my phone use, I think.
Well, these are, basic constitutional rights when you think about it. It's free speech, right of assembly. Jillian, what about you? Had you ever engaged in this sort of activity, and what did it mean to you?
Surprisingly, no. I've never protested.
I am surprised, actually.
Yeah, I was as well. Even though, it's my life. Anyway, what did it mean to me? Initially, kind of, I never was opposed to the idea of a protest, but I was nervous mostly because probably fitting with the millennial generation, I was scared that people like wouldn't like it or wouldn't be invested in it, and even if I was and I felt strongly about it, I was kind of, I guess, afraid or anxious as to the response or what it would be. So I feel like on that same note, like stepping outside of my comfort zone as far as that goes, like how well received is this going to be, and kind of just letting it go and bearing it all and just saying, I don't care what people think, and I'm going to do it, and I'll walk around the cafeteria with a sign, and I'll go stand in your face and ask you to put your phone away until you do, and literally in front of me. I just feel like for me it was empowering, and then as a group it was an empowering thing to do with other people that felt the same way. And as Amelia said, for a few days there on after, I wasn't really into my phone, I didn't use my phone, but then it's the emails from class,
Right.
it's the texts from my parents, it's the texts from my friends, it's, you know, what am I doing for dinner, when am I babysitting, like, I feel like it's not so much so I am dependent on my phone because I think that my phone's great, but it's everyone's dependent on me through my phone. So although I got like a high and I was really happy and thrilled after our protest and I steered away from that, it just came right back to me, which is unfortunate because I didn't want that to happen, and it did, but...
Well, that's something that I was talking about yesterday with someone, that it's almost like a social contract that you have, like, by getting a cell phone, like, especially, like, an upgrade to a smartphone. Like, if I send you a Snapchat and then I see you on campus like 45 minutes later and I either saw that like it was delivered or like you opened it and you didn't respond, I'd be like, what's going on? Like,
Right.
like why didn't you answer me, or why didn't you answer me about lunch? You know, like, and it you really do, like, you feel so guilty because like, it makes people think you're not like answering them. It's like, well, I was just in class, but like that's not even an excuse. Like, people expect you to respond. So like that's what it's almost become to the point. It really is like it's a social contract, having a phone that you will answer as soon as you can, and you will respond to everyone, basically.
That is the problem.
Yeah.
Mhm.
People expect that if they send something, you will answer and
Immediately.
Immediately.
Yeah.
I remember you saying something about that.
Yeah.
A girl or a guy will text someone that they're interested in or that they like, and
they
then they
get
won't get a
offended.
response right
And it's
away.
like 3 hours later.
And it's like the end of the world. It's
Right.
a catastrophe. And that's just like,
It's almost embarrassing.
yeah, it is.
Now, on one level, though, this sounds kind of positive in the sense that it's promoting interaction, conversation, electronic conversation, but it's a communication device that is really, promoting connections between people.
Sure.
By the same token, however, you often hear that one of the characteristics of your generation is that there seems to be a decline in social skills on an in-person basis. That maybe because you're so used to electronic transactions that the face-to-face type of encounter is something that maybe puts people off at this point. There's the old saying about, people breaking up with a romantic partner through a text message, which seems kind of rough.
Yeah.
But there's also, I think, about a third of young adults say that they have avoided one-on-one encounters by faking texting or having a call, that they use their phone as a way to kind of get out of those sort of interactions. So I guess my first question is, do these observations have validity in your experience? Is this really what's going on? Do you think there is a decline in the ability to interact with others on a personal basis?
No. From my personal experience, I would say no. I think that, if anything, in a bizarre way, it encourages people to become... How do I want to say this? I feel like in a bizarre way, like if you talk to someone through text or something, when you see them, you almost have something to talk about. Like, oh, hey, remember when I texted you that? Or I sent you this picture. Oh, did you see that on Instagram? Did you see that on Facebook? Like, I feel as though it kind of, in a way, can join people together. In my experience, I haven't had an awkward encounter with someone that I spoke with. Oh, I mean, I don't like text people I don't know, but I've never faced that problem. And then as far as people using, I know this is the second part of your question, but using phones as an excuse, I'm sure before a cell phone, somebody used something else as an excuse. a newspaper, a book, anything like that, twiddling your thumbs, like putting your head down. I'm sure that there was something pre-cell phone.
Now it's just less conspicuous.
Exactly. Now it just looks as though, oh, they're probably just busy. They're probably texting someone, and that's our problem, is because we accept that as a valid excuse or a valid form of, really, you didn't say hi to me, I'm sitting right next to you, I have been for 15 minutes, you know, we've known each other for 4 years, and unfortunately, I think that's what we need to change. But before that, I'm sure there was something.
So Zach and Amelia, would you more or less concur with what Jillian just said?
I don't know. I think about the first part of it, when you said that, you know, you text someone first and then you meet them. I feel like that's almost like taking away from it, because you don't actually get that first initial in-person meeting. Does that make sense?
Oh, that's not what I was saying.
Yeah.
But I know what you're saying.
That's how I feel like nowadays you can text them and you never met them in person at all. But then when you see them in person, since you've already talked to them through text messages, it's like you've already met each other. So you don't even have to say, hey, you know, this is my name, like this is who I am. You just skip that part because you've already talked to them over text message. Does that make sense?
Okay, I follow that.
Yeah.
The only reason why I would say the negative.
It's a hard question.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Because
The only reason why, all right, so I'll say that I see the negative is because, like, of Jillian's example of, like, talking about, oh, did you see that thing I put up on Instagram, stuff like that, like, I notice those conversations a lot more around certain groups of people maybe I'm, like, less comfortable with or that I see less often, whereas, like, if it's my, like, real close, like, friends that I see on a daily basis, like, if they're talking to me about that, like, I usually, like, guys are kind of rough, but I'll be like, shut up, like, stop talking about Facebook right now, like, we're at dinner right now, like, I don't, you know what I mean, so, but I completely agree that I have, like, said that kind of stuff to people that I am less casual with, so maybe it is better because it opens a door for you to be more comfortable because everyone is so connected through, like, the social medias, but then, like I said, I worry about what it maybe does to, like, the substance of conversations, because you're not forced to really think beyond much other than, like, your Facebook or Instagram. Like, if you can always resort back to just talking about it, you know what I mean? You're never challenged to talk about more stuff.
Well, this is where I'd like to go for a minute with this, because now I'm not speaking out of personal experience, because I don't really text very much. But from what I'm told, the dialogues or conversations that are conducted via text message usually are not the most substantial conversations you're going to have. They deal with relatively trivial matters. And I wonder whether, maybe it's not a dumbing down, but I wonder whether the amount of time, I'm told the average young adult, person in their 20s, sends and receives about 110 text messages a day. So 220 encounters here on average a day, talking about relatively trivial things. That has to have a cumulative effect on, you know, what your mind thinks about. It certainly, there's a block of time there. I don't know how long it takes. What does it take? 20 seconds to send a text or to read a text? If you did the math, I mean, there's a certain amount of time you're spending each day on relatively trivial conversations. That strikes me. I'm professor speaking, of course, right, and the professor of big questions. But it strikes me as not really how I would want to spend my time, and not how I would ideally want to see my students or my children spend that much time. But are these claims exaggerated, or is it more, I suppose it's going to vary from individual to individual. You're going to have your light phone users, you're going to have your average people, and then you're going to have those who are kind of going over the side of the cliff because that's all they do all day long. But how serious an issue is this?
I think it's almost become so normal to us that we don't even think about it. I think it's more out of the ordinary to have like a substantial conversation. Like you were saying with your friends, you do it sometimes. Yeah. But if I try to talk, I feel like my friends, that something about in our class I talked about, they'd be like, oh, cool, and then just kind of be like, oh, today this happened to me, and I saw it on Facebook or whatever. But I just think it's so normal for us to, you know, talk trivial things all day long that when we try and like get deeper with it, that's when it's weird.
So, you know, I would say that is exactly the problem,
right.
though.
Oh, it's completely the problem.
Exactly, and for that reason.
I don't know. Because now that we're talking about it, I hadn't had this thought, hadn't occurred to me, but now I feel as though, like, I should have recognized before, but it's a choice. Like, having a phone and having those trivial conversations is a choice. And you could say, text someone and say, hey, you know what, I'm in class right now, or I'm going to spend time with my friends, I'll call you when I'm done. I mean, I've made that decision many a time, and people have texted me about trivial things or, you know, little things, and it would be ideal, of course, if we could all sit down at dinner together at night and talk about things and hopefully have that lead into a more, you know, rich, substantial conversation. But the fact of the matter is, we all have so much going on that at the end of the day, you're tired, and maybe what you want to talk about is Facebook or what's on TV, and maybe once that's what makes those substantial conversations like this one so wonderful, is because they don't occur all the time. And I feel like maybe, to play devil's advocate with myself, like that balances out like the richness and the dullness. But also, as I said, like I think it's a choice whether we have those conversations or not. And if that's our choice, then we are millennials.
I would definitely say that it's healthy though to have like those trivial conversations once in a while, like the fluff conversations. You don't need to. But like what we talked about, like the normalcy, like I just started thinking about it when you were talking, that I just had lunch with someone today, and like they had their phone on the table the entire time. Like I consciously make sure mine's at least not on the table now, but like, and it just kept like lighting up and like getting notifications from Instagram, like boom, 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 and I was like, they weren't really too distracted by it, like they kept like going like this, and I wasn't too, like, actually no, that's a lie, I was very distracted by it, and I wasn't even thinking about this yet, but I was just sitting there, I was like our conversation's been stopped so many times that at this point, like I think I just turned around and got on my phone, and I was just like at this point the conversation's so lost, and we've been trying for 45 minutes to have it, but it gets stopped every 15 seconds, or the train of thought keeps getting interrupted because of the notifications popping up. So, but like you said, like that's normal though. Like you're like, it's normal to have your phone out on the table when you're in the cafeteria with your friends, and like I think that is more so the problem than it is like being on the phone when you're walking through campus or stuff. You know what I mean? Like that. Like it's more that it's socially acceptable to interrupt your friends.
Yeah, I mean there are things people do. I know sometimes when I go out to dinner with my friends, you stack. You stack your phones, and I guess like the first one to pick it up pays the bill, which never actually happens.
Yeah.
But
it's a good
I mean, it's a nice incentive, and people are trying. And it's just hard. It's like it's an addiction, I think.
I just think it's sad that we have to try in the first place.
Yeah.
You know,
you just have to accept
it's true.
it.
That's just the way it is.
How far down the slippery slope are we? I mean, is it too late to try to reverse course? Or is this just getting worse and worse, and do you fear for your children that they are going to be so steeped in a technological universe that admittedly has some very wonderful qualities to it? I mean, the power you can have in a cell phone or just in technology in general is amazing. But on the other hand, I think as time is going on, we are beginning to recognize that there's a flip side to phones. They're not just flip phones. That we really have to be cautious, that there may come a point where we've been so not indoctrinated, but so influenced by them, it becomes so normal to do what we do that maybe it's almost hard to turn the bend and to maybe retrieve some of what was lost. Are we at the point where there's no turning back, or is the fact that it is a choice, as you put it, leave us with hope that maybe some people can make better choices?
This is when I think I realized how far down like the slope we actually are. We saw this commercial. It's for like a UNICEF project, and we like looked all into it. It is like a legitimate thing. The TAP project. You can Google it. It's UNICEF TAP project, and like you put your phone down on the table, you start up the app and everything, and you hit start. And as long as you leave your phone there, I believe it's like every 10 minutes you leave your phone untouched, they donate like 1 day's worth of clean water. And then like every like hour they do something else and so on. But when I realized, I was like, so people don't even have to leave their rooms anymore. They can sit in their bed and just, if they're willing to not touch their phone and not like check on any of their stuff and leave it, they can donate. So like That to me was amazing, that you don't have to go out and do anything anymore. All you have to do is be willing to not touch your phone. Like, it used to be you have to, go and do stuff, but that was when it really, like, hit me, like, all right, wow, maybe there is something here, but...
So is this progress?
I guess it's progress towards the right way, because now they're starting to finally realize that, well, if we have these cell phones and they use it very, very well for, like, advertising now, but...
I participated in Tap for UNICEF, and I was disgustingly proud of myself.
Well, see,
it was horrible.
And how long did you do it for, like, on the first time, and you were so proud?
10 minutes.
Like 10 minutes?
Just one day of clean water, one day.
The first day we did it, we had like maybe 4 or 5 people doing it, and we all put our phones down, and after, I would say like an hour, somebody like caved out. They're like, oh man, look, I did 6 days of drinking water.
Yeah.
And then someone else, it was like after like 2.5 hours, like everyone else stopped, and it was like me and one other person were left. And we left it for like 7-8 hours just because we were playing like other stuff and like not thinking about it. But the people that had like picked up their phones earlier were kind of like mocking us, and they're like, all right, show-offs, like we get it, like you don't need it. But like, why is that showing off? Like we weren't even thinking about the phones because we got so distracted by other stuff, which is good. But then it's funny, it was kind of funny to us that like they were sitting there the whole time like, oh my god, I can't believe they aren't picking up their phones still, like what are they doing? Like, and they could hear our phones buzzing, and that was like giving them anxiety because no one was checking the notifications. But it was just like, that was one of the first like really opening things, I would say.
Yeah, I had a huge ego boost after that. I'll admit it. I'm embarrassed to say it, but I think I was out to breakfast, and it was the last day, because it was March 31st is the last day, and I was like, oh, I gotta do Tap for UNICEF. I think my sister reminded me, and I had it on, and I kept looking over. I was like, 7 minutes. I was like, 8 minutes. Got it, 10 minutes. And then after 10 minutes, I was applauding myself. My ego just like inflated because I was like, didn't touch my phone and donated clean water. And I feel like, in that respect, like, is it really bettering us, or is it doing more harm than good? Obviously, donating water is great, wonderful, it has to be done, but isn't there another way that we could do it, I guess?
So you're celebrating the fact that you can go 10 minutes without touching your cell phone other than to tap for UNICEF.
I was.
See, and I'm inclined to say I think you can do even more.
Of course, absolutely. I could have.
Not you personally, but I mean, I think in general, as a generation. Obviously, the three of you have thought about these questions quite a bit. You're very articulate. You've gone through the protest. This is something that's meaningful to you. What's the message that you want to leave with your peers? What have you learned as you've thought through the whole issue of cell phone use, technology, human interaction? What's the most important thing that you think you're going to take away from this and that you hope your peers will remember?
I just think the most important thing is that your cell phone is not your whole world. I think that we need to learn to, at least, for a couple hours a day, have stuff like time to ourselves and not worry about the phone, not check it as much, especially in class. Like, that's getting to be a really big problem, is in class and you're not even focusing anymore on what you're being taught. So I think just the message I would like to take away is to not focus on my phone and social media so much. Just, what's around me is more important than what's in my phone.
Well said.
I mean, I would say just, like, once you put down your phone, like, people will keep saying that, no, it's not a problem, or no, like, I'm not addicted, or no anything, but until they actually, like, put down their phone and, like, take a couple minutes away, do they realize, like, how, like, attached they are. Like, it's easy to say, like, no, I'm not attached to my phone while your phone's sitting in your hand, but to leave it alone for a couple hours and to actually, like, talk to people and challenge yourself to go to class and leave your phone in your room. Like, I don't think a lot of people would be able to do something like that. Like, they would have a separation anxiety. But I think really just the message is just to, like, really just enjoy the people around you, enjoy the time, especially in college. Like, it's for the quickest years, and these have been the quickest couple months of my life as we race to the end. But it's just like, enjoy it, and you're not enjoying it if you're on your phone the entire time.
Well, as you say, graduation is not too far away, and that's a big moment. But I'm looking forward to when you come back for your 5th year reunion, because I'd like to hear. We're putting
out the cell phone boats onto the
You're
table.
right.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what transpires, and whether the trends and the patterns you've identified have intensified, or you've become the more of an agent in your own life, making choices that sometimes go counter to what the rest of the culture is, and what that feels like. Obviously, technology is an issue that's going to be with us for the rest of our lives. This doesn't seem to be going away. And like most things, it presents challenges and opportunities for us. And I think in many cases it's a question of how we choose. Can we maximize the opportunity while at the same time respond to the challenges in a productive way? Lots of discussion about that, lots of good questions that are raised, and I thank you all for coming out and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful. We always ask big questions in the Religious and Theological Studies Department. It's what we do. I know you too ask questions as well, so don't be afraid to stop by, talk to us about big questions. We ask them all the time.